Evening. Uh, Tonight we're doing it. Part two of the trial for case 4. Will we be able to actually? I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen because it really looks like Soseki did it. So we'll have to figure this one out. But I think the pieces are starting to fall into place. So I think we'll get it. Yeah, we'll jump straight in, cause what is waiting for people to actually join the stream? Let's see. We left off at a very high tension point. I have considered the defense counsel's request for a further summation examination of the jury, and I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman? We are. We are, my lord. Ah, that's not quite his voice. It's fine. Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime. Judicial findings. Mark 2. Okay. The accused. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his. If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? Dearie me, it was only a little book, hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit. Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tidy bit of trouble. Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes. It made him sneeze? Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems. With one notable exception, of course. My learned student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness testimony. So, the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime. Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way. That means, I'm afraid, that during this summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Yeah, more Santa courtroom drama. Let's go. Who stabbed the woman and how? Those two details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. And there I was, thinking this might be hard. Yeah, I did see you at least made it to the finals on lifting. Like, how did that go? But, Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it. Otherwise, this really will be where the trial ends. Oh, congrats! Good job! Yeah, I saw in the chat too in Archeon's server that it sounded like the rule set was a little bit weird in terms of maps. That would be frustrating. Otherwise, this really will be where the trial ends. Yeah, congratulations on winning the tournament. That's awesome. Ugh, no pressure then. That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, counsel. Oh, yes, my lord. Alright, Ryunosuke, focus your mind now. Clearly, the key to this summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid. Or should I say, Mrs. Gerdeb? Yeah, the rules needed some tweaking, but overall enjoyed yourself a lot. Feel like I got lucky though, many others struggled with team stuff. Yes, this is part 2 of the case from last stream. It continued right from the point we left off. Yeah, because probably gonna be here for a while. Yep, you didn't miss a thing. Yeah, I know a lot about good Overwatch tournament rules, so there's like some things I would expect to be in anywhere, and if it's not, it's probably a little bit annoying to me. We have a book that disappeared from the Gerdeb's house on the evening of the incident. And the fourth book found in the victim's hand. There must be a way to link the two. Yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far, whatever it takes. Yeah, it's just because I've played in a number of tournaments, although I've never done well. Oh no, as far as I'm aware, Susato-san is not a medium. She does potentially bear some resemblance to the girl that is. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Gerdub and how she reacts even to the lit things other people say. But yeah, no, yeah, what's her name? Uh, Phoenix Wright. Oh, Maya. Her name's Maya. Okay, I remember. But yeah, Maya's the one who's a spirit medium. They do they do look somewhat similar. I'll give you that. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, Miss Sato is not a medium. So there is no like I think the first case. Mm. Well, yeah, that's always nice to have flexible supports, but but yeah, I but you know, it's awesome you won. There's always a little bit of there's always a little bit. Oh yeah, the first case of like the the first like Phoenix Wright trilogy of games, like or I don't know, one of the cases in that trilogy of games, like at some point Maya channeling a spirit of the dead is counted as a valid witness, which is very funny. It's like I call my first witness to this crime the victim. it's it was very convoluted as to why like I don't even know. I don't even know how it's we take those. um you would think, right? But there still is problems with a medium's credibility even though Maya is legitimately a good one. Yeah, these games are maybe a little bit more than a little silly. I think they're very silly. One of my favorite lines from the original trilogy of games when I watched the playthrough of it was Phoenix Wright saying, "Let the parrot take the stand," because that happens. Yeah, no, sounds about right. Alright, the defense's rebuttal. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his.
Hold it!
We're gonna press things. But as we know now, there were 4 books, not 3. Oh, that's a good question. At the very least, so far, Ryunosuke hasn't tried to kill anyone with it like Kazuma did in the first case of this game. Because it was Kazuma's sword. When you win when I won the first case, Kazuma literally like attacks the prosecutor. It's just like I think that's going a little bit too far. I mean, in the, yeah, there tends to be at least one weapon or two that'll show up in the courtroom. Um, like in the previous case, one of the witnesses was shooting people with a smoke grenade gun. That was something. And they just let her keep it. I don't know. Yeah, just normal stuff. Well, what difference does it make? There's every possibility that the 4th book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord. Yes, that's the part I have a problem with. Sorry? The big point gets me giggling every time. Yeah, this, it's so fun. Just everything about this game is so great. A couple of the dialogue lines earlier were pretty awful though. In like one of the earlier cases. Well, well, at that point, the woman was stabbed. This landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Enjoying a fiery scrap with his wife or something, you said. That's not exactly how I put it, no. Also, just Ryunosuke's face Like, he just looks like he has zero confidence at all times, and it's kind of funny. Well, anyway, the point is, the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened. I think that's what you call a strong alibi. So it couldn't have been the landlord who did it, which only leaves the Nipponese fellow. Honestly, I can't see what all of this palaver's about. It's a done deal, isn't it? I suppose it is. I've nothing witty left to say. A novel alternative.
Hold it!
So, you might be willing to change your decision, you mean? Right? The character design in this game is great. Oh my. Such delight on your face. But I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I am a very modern, metropolitan, and rational woman. That's great. If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place? You see, modern, metropolitan, and rational thinking, wouldn't you say? And not at all extreme. I just the prosecutor Van Zeeks just keeps like throwing wine glasses into that. He threw a bottle of wine into the spectator gallery last time. It's like that probably hit someone. As I see it, an overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese man has been implicated by overwhelmingly strong testimony. He just like threw it over his shoulder and it went into the spectator gallery and he was like, forgive the discourtesy of throwing my bottle of wine into the spectator gallery. It's just like, what are you doing? Honestly, with Van Zeeks as the prosecutor. So, despite one or two minor puzzlements, I do declare that the man is overwhelmingly guilty. Right? It's so awesome. Modern, metropolitan, and rational logic, wouldn't you say? Overwhelmingly. But us modern gals are always delighted to embrace new fads, you know? So I'd be only too happy to consider an exciting new theory if you could come up with one. Yeah. Actually dead. I would be happy to do that, too, if only I could. Let's do our very best not to disappoint the modern and metropolitan young lady. You know it, Susato. Right, I'm glad you omitted rational there. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window is closed, can it?
Hold it!
But what about the possibility the window was open? What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been. Could be called yeah, this lady could be called modern and metropolitan. I mean, she is, as self-proclaimed. How can you be so sure? The prosecutor fellow over there said it earlier, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. You don't want to invite that sort of cold indoors. So no, the window wasn't open. Us Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, see? But you couldn't categorically state that the window was not open, could you? It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it. Then what's the point of even having windows, huh? Counsel, will you kindly refrain from childish bickering? Oh, sorry? Somehow I need to show there's an undeniable possibility that the window was open. Because this young man is not going to budge otherwise. Okay, this is the most important thing to press on. But the little book was on fire at the time, was it not? With flames of love, I'll have you know. There's really no such thing as a loving incendiary bomb. That's a jump, Ryunosuke. Well, he brought it upon himself. It's playing with fire to betray a fiery love. Yeah, no, yeah. Her face does have physics. Isn't it? Well, don't you agree? Yeah, no, right? In real life, there's no way she would end up on this jury because she literally is, like, she's the defendant's landlord's wife. They have a pre-established opinion of him already. Oh, well, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding, Mrs. Gerda. Never mind you that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute, nothing more. And I won't have any more of these suggestions that it was anything whatsoever to do with this crime. Right. Well, we'll see about that. But what about juror number 5? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Mrs. Gerardev's relentless onslaughts. It's almost as though he's used to it. What a gentle soul he is. Just want to get this over with. Hold it! You just want to get this over with? How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here. Well, him and me both then, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some readies with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me? My missus isn't one to mess about. You know, she can be fierce, believe you me. Another shining example of marital bliss, then. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, do you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember. Sorry? It was too frightening. That's the thing. It must have been blocked out. Helpful. I wonder if Mr. Beat will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf. Don't even go there, Miss Susato. There must be some way to jog his memory about this. this is where we actually get to start putting some pieces together, I think. Does does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case? Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, lad. Could you tell us more about that fire? It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. It had 75 candles on the top, it did. What a sight to behold it was. You put candles on a cake? Was it some kind of devil worship? Of course not. It was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, obviously. 75 candles is a lot to put on a cake. It would be like a campfire on top. Yeah, no, Ryunosuke certainly says some things. Buddy, what? Yeah, I agree with that. It would taste like melted wax. Perhaps. It seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruhodo. Anyway, I mustered all my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out, but candles went flying all over the room. Wait, how did it... He's too powerful. Instead of blowing out the candles, he blew them all off the cake. That's the furniture. Yeah, Kirby levels. The furniture caught and everything went up. The whole place filled with smoke. Definitely sounds like devil worship to me. He's still on it. Thinking. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold. But how did you catch a cold from a fire? What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, bless them, threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it. The windows. Yeah, The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave, it did. Yeah, window open confirmed. We've got it. It's a reasonable thing. You want to get rid of the smoke. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in the hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in a hurry. What? I knew it was devil worship all along. But something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsue, could have attacked the young woman on the street, as well as how he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Yes. I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions, just a connection might do the trick. Alright, I'll see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike. That's the spirit. Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum. Ba, ba, ba. Pit against the old man.
Objection!
These two jurors' statements clearly contradict one another. They do. How exactly, counsel? Don't point at me again. I told you it wasn't me. Hmm? What's that you say? Speak up, lad. Speak up. Juror number 3, do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. His beard is like a little cloud. Well, yes, of course. Because it was an emergency? I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from a fire, then you'd be mad not to open the... Oh! Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garadeb household. And Mr. Garadeb had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke. Oh my hat. Oh, she has tea.
Excuse me.
Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that? That's a lot of... You're right. Mrs. Garadeb. Oh, dearie me. What is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am? It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now. What is it? When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window? What? I beg your pardon? What are you insinuating? The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that he would not have opened the window. And what if we did? Oh, all right then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window, which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering. Even though your house was on fire. Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise. Of course, I should have realized. That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have that added to Mrs. Garadeb's formal statement. Yes, the window was open at the time. I'd clean forgotten, but it's true.
Objection.
Okay, now we put them against each other.
Hold it.
I'm sorry, but as foreman of the jury, I have to object. That's complete nonsense. What? I'm a banker. Don't forget, an educated man. And there's no contradiction as far as I can see. Quite so, Mr. Foreman. I will. Oh, okay. There was nothing whimsical about. Okay, that was my bad. And you can decide where the contradiction. Okay, so he already agreed.
Hold it!
We'll press the statement. The fourth book, found at the scene of the crime, shows various very obvious signs of fire damage, and the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garadeb told us he had been reading. Well, I really couldn't say. On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading? I did. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. And now you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it. You're right. Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset? Because I couldn't. You insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on, as well you know. I really don't. Yes. Yep, she's just hitting the other jury member. It's okay, he doesn't seem to care.
Oh boy.
I barely noticed I was throwing a book, much less the title of it.
Excuse me.
What does he have to say about this? What is it? Juror number 5? His face. You know something. I've remembered what it was. That memory I'd blocked out. Bro looks like a JoJo stand user. I could see it. Ah. It was listening to what this granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back. Oh, that's rude. Who are you calling a granny? You cheeky devil. I'm Mrs. Garadeb, or the maid. I'll have you know. Yeah, he does hard labor. The man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time. It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, like. I put my hand in my pocket for the wages I just earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out. Oh dear. What a disaster. You haven't heard the half of it, boy. Oh? The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight. I've lost the day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear. Stuck into the wall next to me, it did, about an inch deep. No words. Just terror. I I could smell it then, you know. That god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was gonna end up face down in the muddy banks that night, I can tell ya. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it? I'll never use the word lightly again. Anyway, point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it. Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined. No, I wasn't thinking that. Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like. What? Attack? Who are you going to attack? Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think. Alright, we'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later. If I dare. The kitchen knife really brought that home to me. Your wife really threw a kitchen knife at you? That's right. She was chopping meat with it. Had a tidy edge on it, I believe. Still, it's all memories, isn't it? It started with that smile she threw me when we were courting. And since then, the list of things she's thrown at me has grown along with our relationship. There was a cup, then a glass, then a pot, a kettle, a chair, a wardrobe. Oh, what? How strong is this wife? A wardrobe, a cooker, a bathtub. How? How? But how is the... Wouldn't that be more dangerous than the knife? How? A wardrobe in a bathtub? How is he alive? Okay. Wait, one second. It needs some water. No. Okay. I think I'm good. I think I'm good. There was a cup, then a glass, then a pot, a kettle, a chair, a wardrobe, a cooker, a bathtub. Your wife must be even beefier than you. And things came to a head last week when she threw me right into the Thames. She actually... She threw him into the Thames. Oh no. That would be a hard smell to get out. Still, she's not bad when she's calmed down. She's a little sweetheart, really. I'm so happy for you. If you want to know what I think this whole idea of ladies first that we're so obsessed with in this country was thought up by some clever lads who'd been tossed in the Thames a few too many times by their wives. That's a very interesting theory. What a terrible thought. On the face of it, this juror's statement just sounds like a really extreme anecdote. But I think it might turn out to be an extremely powerful weapon. A weapon I might be able to use to make the jurors accept an alternative explanation here. That's when the chill gets you see. Did you change your statement from before? Well, yes, it was one of my most memorable birthdays, you see. I couldn't let it go unremembered. I'm sure the defendant will be delighted that you're using his trial to explore your past. And how is that memory related to the case exactly? Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, I'm afraid. Never mind. He's as deaf as a post when he wants to be. But actually, this old man's anecdote might just provide the alternative explanation I need to make my point to the other jurors. We used unlit candles on my birthday this year. It's safer that way. Am I able to use his argument against the modern woman? No, I think I need to establish first that she was throwing anything and the window was open, so it's not out of the question that she also threw a knife at her husband and it went out the window and hit someone. I think that's where this is going. I think, you know what I think? Like, she threw the flaming book out the window. It landed in front of the victim. She bent down to pick it up, and then a knife flew out the window and landed in her back. I think that's what happened. There's no way. How can this be real? How? That's the only thing I can think of at this point. Because the defendant said she just collapsed in front of him. And it wouldn't be, depending on how quickly it happened, like, he probably wouldn't have noticed that she was bending down to pick something up at first. Oh, that's so... Ugh. That's rough. So, the window was open when the Garadebs were arguing that day. Yes, Mrs. Garadeb has finally admitted to it. Which is a very significant victory for the defense. I feel like the fog's starting to clear, and an alternative explanation for this case is starting to show itself. So I think that's what we have to establish first. We can't do anything here. I feel like I can't do this yet. It's a definite possibility. Let me see if I can... Uh, the window was open at the time. Um... Oh, maybe I can use it directly against the other woman's argument. We'll try that. That looks like actually the right move. Juror number 2 and juror number 5.
Objection!
Those two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection. Good grief. You mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once. Juror number 2, do you think, perhaps, that this could be one such novel alternative? Oh, my, whatever do you mean? An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back. What are you talking about? We've demonstrated that the fourth book, the lion's pride that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garadev's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Geradev household to the scene of the crime, the street below. Right? It seems like the tech isn't quite there to actually fingerprint stuff. It seems like they don't actually do fingerprinting yet. This is like time period wise, you'd put it like a bit after World War II, but it still is an alternative history, I think. What's that? No, what's that now? Right? I think I'm right. It hurts a little bit. After all, Mrs. Geradev could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Yeah, the outfits. Isn't that right, juror number 4? What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole? I'm beginning to think that ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happened. Now you listen here, you Eastern Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house, but what was it? I'm really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Actually, let's take a look. We have the jackknife. Um... The... Oh, okay. I was just checking because sometimes these things have, a human version of a hamster. um, I was just checking to see if the knife had any initials on it. You never know. This warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman. I'll try to explain the defense's theory. Yeah, a lot of people are really mean to Ryunosuke. It's kind of funny. The other object that found its way from the Garrett household to the scene of the crime was the murder weapon. Well, the weapon used in the assault. It's not a murder. She is alive but comatose. The victim. Juror number 4, Mrs. Garrett. What? What now? I must apologize in advance for this, but I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before? Puffer fish looking maid. Oh, good lord, counsel. What on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's back, man. My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Gerdeb were in the throes of an argument. Yeah, I think he has one of those powdered wigs, you know, because that's a thing of the judiciary in Great Britain. So he's, I don't know what his hair is like under the powdered wig, but he's probably wearing a powdered wig for sure. Because I think, I'm not 100%, I think maybe, no, I'd have to double check. But at least for a while, the judiciary in Great Britain, like, was still wearing powdered wigs. I don't know if they still do. I don't know, that might also be a thing in the US, or at least it was. I don't really get it or know much about that, but it's a thing. Mrs. Gerda was hurling anything she could at her husband, who'd been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at the scene of the crime. Yeah, it was definitely, like, at one point in the past, it was definitely very common. Like, pretty much all the images you see of, like, colonial era Britain, or like the founding fathers of the US is pretty common too. So probably around that time period. A window that had, at least, like, that's, I don't know. History, I know things about history, but my recollection is super vague generally. Because that's just, most of it does not feel that important for me to just know. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at the crime scene. You can't seriously believe that? The book was found in the victim's grasp. Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand? Huh. Even my missus hasn't got an arm like that. Yes, I admit, there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why We must not allow this trial to end. Not right now. Oh my. 17th century. But yeah, I do think there's a chance that they still are warned by judiciary in like the US and Britain today sometimes. But that probably I think that definitely has fallen off in the US. In Britain, I'm not sure. Uh Mrs. Gerdeb, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? Oh, ah, um, ah. Oh, we killed her. It's over. My lord. I I wish to change my decision. Well, I don't think this is case closed. I'm a woman of my word, after all. Thank you, madam. Yes, I agree. I certainly did not see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for the trial to come to an end with so many unanswered questions. Mr. Foreman, I'd have to agree. The voice. Not that I think the granny did it, mind. Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either. That mixed up his voice too much. Nah, all together now, ladies and gents. 4 innocent votes. We've made it through our second summation examination. We've done it. We we did it. Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors call guilty against 4 now calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of the court is divided, and this trial will continue. There's no way. But yeah, it would be pretty. Could she really throw this stuff across the street, though? I mean, I would believe it because it was the. Um. It was the. Wait. Um. Second floor or third floor of the house? I think it was a 3-story building. Well, plus like the street level, which is the like basement or something. I was a little bit confused when we were in the landlord's like in the house. I was confused by the floors because like the street level first floor and then like second floor. But it was just like the first floor it was I feel like you could toss a knife off of a third story and get across the street. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's possible. It depends on how wide the street is though. That's the big thing because like it was a big enough street for carriages. It's like one of the main thoroughfares or whatever. But I know a lot of street widths in Britain are varied. There's some places with very narrow streets that are much older. Now then, Lord Von Zeeks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed? This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save the gutter. Uh, if I may, Lord Van Zeeks, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened. Credible. Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke, to which I barely know how to respond. But let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those places being discussed. What do you mean by that? What's his angle this time? It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Garadeb household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance from the Garadev's house to the scene is some 15 yards. Let me see, 15 yards. That's around 14 meters. 14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I'd imagined. And, as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted, as having portentous significance, the fourth book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, wantonly hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day. Having a bad day for the victim, I think. Even those pathetic, serialized detective stories have more believable plots. There's nothing I can say to that. That prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice. Miss Susato. Serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Maybe let's pick our battles here. My lord, might I be allowed to speak? As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense, yes. Go ahead. The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy. But what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gerdev, must be called to testify and submit to cross-examination. Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror? This wouldn't have happened if she wasn't actually allowed to be a juror on the case. Order, order, order. Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
Objection!
No, the wine. And unnecessary. Lord of Fonziques. He just killed another spectator. They're dead. There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. He actually, they call him the Reaper the Bailey for a reason, you know? If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume they would be able to testify accordingly. What say you, witnesses? Yes, sir. Constable Rowley Beat reporting for duty, sir. Well, good morning, officer. Sorry for dozing until now, sir. I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir. Oh, they are so heroic, these London bobbies. Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more. Oh, Rolly, my hero, you make me swoon. Very well. I hereby reject the defense's request. Oh. And order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation of events. Yes, sir. He's awake now. Constable Beats report. This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Gerdev. Believe me, a London bobby is good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Gerdev house are top-hinged casements. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it. I did leave the scene to go fetch help, but my trusty Rolly was there to make sure nothing was disturbed. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing to report on that front, sir. Well, this is quite startling. Top hinged casement windows. That detail was not in the police report, Constable. Yes. Sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy. Um, um, you cannot excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable. No, sir. Sorry, but what exactly is a top hinged casement window? And you cannot excuse your ignorance with such trite remarks, my learned friends. Right, but also, there is something to keep in mind. It was his wedding anniversary, and he was trying to make it to dinner at the time, also. That is why. So, I don't know. I think it would be credible he could have dozed off. It's possible. Of course. Sorry. How could you even be awake for a whole month? It's actually insane. I've found it, Mr. Naruhodo. Cast your mind back to the windows in Mr. and Mrs. Gerdev's room. Alright, I'll try. So, the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the house. But as it's a top hinged casement window, it swings open along the upper edge. You see, I'm glad you've rectified your ignorance. A casement window's most prominent feature is its stay, a metal bar which prevents the window from being opened beyond a certain amount. It it prevents it opening. This is all news to me. Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife would have been thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the pane and fallen straight down to the pavement below. No. You see the problem then? Good. Your education in Windows is complete. There was never any possibility of either the book or the knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered, something we've discounted already. That that can't be. Did you see it, Rolly? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony. Oh, yes, my darling. I saw it. I saw how he crumbled before me. Oh, Rolly, You're so strong. How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and already my argument's been destroyed. Counsel, if you would drag yourself upright again, the court awaits your cross-examination. My lord, oh good, another desperate situation. Constable Beats report.
Hold it!
We're gonna press everything he said. How can you say that for certain? A very good question, sir. And the answer is this. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to all us policemen of our sworn duty. He showed us that before, didn't he? Did he? I can't say I remember. To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man is what the job's all about. And that is why I can stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you oh Bobby's good for his word. While rubbing my tired eyes, admittedly, sir. Oh, Rolly, you're so manly. Of course I am, my darling Patricia. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. No, none of this is what I meant. I mean, how can you say for certain this case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb? Ah, I see, sir. You should have said so earlier, sir. Yes, well... So, could you answer the question? That was a waste of time then. Absolutely, sir. I will answer it to the fullest of my abilities, sir. There's a surprising reason why Mr. and Mr. Garadev's domestic dispute can't be related to this case. But before I get into that, sir, just one thing. Yes? I'd very much like you and all your countrymen to understand the great British institution of Scotland Yard. I so hope you'll take me back some tale. I hope you'll take back some tales of us London bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles. I wasn't planning on going back just yet. I've only just arrived here. So to that end, sir, I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your perusal. But I must warn you, you won't be able to get through it without shedding a few tears. Thank you. I'll try. Constable Beats' warrant card has been entered into the court record. And we will take a look at it. Because it's surely relevant. Item 1. A policeman will strive to preserve the peace within his allotted beat. A patrolling officer is expected to walk 20 miles around his beat every day for the furtherance of community relations. Metropolitan Police Regulations. Let me see. Item 1. Any crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the beat in which they are discovered. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Okay, there we go. We will press. By which you mean they don't open fully. Is that correct? Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, you see. So they're restricted as to how much they open. And therefore, anything thrown out of the window from inside the room would simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. Here is the location where objects would have fallen. Yes. Directly opposite the scene of the crime on the other side of the rather wide road. Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top hinged casement thing before? Well, I have another question for you, Constable. And what would that be, sir? How did you even know? Why would you have any idea what sort of windows Mr. and Mrs. Gerardev's house is furnished with? Ah, well, sir, that's very simple. You see, I helped with the investigation yesterday.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, Mrs. Beat? Sorry. You look, well, delighted? Is there some particular reason for that? Oh, I was just remembering, that's all. We really were so lucky. Lucky? What do you mean? Well, of course I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't misunderstand me, please. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Rolly's beat. It was so close, you see. Oh, I hadn't realized. Oh yes, that street by Briar Road that's the boundary between Rolly's beat and the next one. Isn't that right, my love? He fell asleep again. Constable Beat. Yes, that's right. That's the reason I was helping out with the interviewing the occupants of the Gerardev household yesterday. Their house is on my beat, you see, sir. That really was cutting it close then. Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something. If the Gerardev household is on your beat, does that mean the pavement next to it is as well? Outside Mr. Gerdev's house? Yes, ma'am. The pavement on that side of the road is part of my beat. I see. I was unaware of that. Just think, if the woman had been attacked just on the other side of Briar Road, we would never have been able to go for that meal to celebrate our wedding anniversary. But that's the life of a Bobby, after all. Extraordinary people are Bobbies, tirelessly working for the benefit of all Londoners. Do you know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Rolly for all of his hard work. Don't you think so, my darling? That must be it, Pat, my love. That must be it. I think perhaps we should make sure we have that information officially on record. Leave it to me, Mr. Naruhodo. I'll take care of it immediately. The case file's information has been updated. And now it's my turn, I think. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it.
Hold it!
But, according to my notes here, the sun had gone down already and it was dark. Oh, but Rolly and I were strolling along, gazing at the night sky and looking for our lucky star. Sorry? The star that will guide us to eternal happiness. Can't it guide you to answer the question? If a flamin' book had cut across the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star. And if I had seen a shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. Let Rolly be an inspector, I would have said, 3 times at least. Of course, with the smog and everything, we couldn't actually see any stars. In short, you are trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky before you. Yes, sir? That's correct, sir. As sure as the night sky in London is starless, sir. Certainly seems like they're telling the truth. And when we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, we ran straight over to help her. Ba-ba-ba. Chris. Yes, you said that you went to a nearby police box to fetch another officer. Is that right? That's right, yes. If it had been on Rolly's beat, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course. Don't feel bad, my love. You can't expect to know the location of every police box on every beat. So, Rolly told me the way, only I sort of got a little lost on the way. Patricia, my darling, that's why I love you. Your terrible sense of direction is bewitching to me. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. Oh, please. Yeah, well, Rolly's awake. He's awake now. He's good. He's giving real testimony now. He said he'd been awake for a whole month. So that's why he was asleep. Rolly, awoken. Very good. So, I suppose I was gone for about 15 minutes. But, like I said, my Rolly was at the scene the whole time, making sure nothing was disturbed. I was off duty at the time, of course, but a true Bobby is never really off duty, sir. Didn't take my eye off the crime scene for a moment, sir.
Hold it!
We're pressing this. Nothing to report. That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time. Never looked away for a second. Why does he have his helmet strap in his mouth? That's a good question. I'm, have it? I don't know, his helmet's also really beat up. It's clearly dented. Maybe he got hit by a flying book and got knocked out for 15 minutes. Although that couldn't have happened. Although I think we're about to get somewhere. But yeah, I guess that's just part of his character. That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time, never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. I can swear that on the yard's honor, sir. Really, that seems a little strange. Beg your pardon, sir? Strange, sir. Seems altogether regular to me. This burnt copy of the Lion's Pride was originally in the Garrett household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as you were at the scene of the crime for the entire time? Aha! Could it be a different copy, sir? One that just happened to be burnt as well? Even if that were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book like that in her hand? We can see from the photographic print that she had a bag over her shoulder. Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hand from the moment we arrived at the scene. Is that so? There's something about this statement that's not sitting right with me. The two mysteries of how that knife ended up in her back and how the book ended up in her hand. There must be some common thread between them. Can I ask you something, please, Mr. Lawyer, sir? Yes, of course. What is it? You're... you're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell. What? I wasn't really, I mean, what's she doing? Please, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean my testimony is any less valuable. You might just see me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word, I am. I really don't ever remember suggesting that I doubted you. No excuses. I don't want to hear it. My voice will be heard. My lord, you'll let me speak, won't you? Yes, Mrs. Beat. I will allow you to supplement your testimony if you so desire. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the sage one. The judge has given up. That was a very loud mutter. I heard that. That Japanese man thinks a policeman's wife's word counts for nothing, does he? Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Rolly won't. Duly noted, Mrs. Beat. Please, I humbly ask you to continue. What could she possibly be about to say, I wonder? Probably something helpful to us. I know what I saw. Okay,
Hold it!
what's up with this? Mrs. Beat, nobody is questioning what you've told us. I saw it, I did. That evening, I saw it clearly. That little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back, slinking away from the scene. Huh. And man needed a chew stem. I guess that would make sense if he was chewing on it to keep himself awake. That would be something. And I know what I didn't see as well. I didn't see any flaming books or knives flying through the sky. All very clear. You also mentioned something about having a poor sense of direction. Oh, yes, well, that's a little embarrassing, really. I'm always ending up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Rolly. He gets ever so cross. Do you have something to add
Excuse me.
to that then, sir? Constable Beat, is there a problem? No, sir. No problem, sir. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps? Oh, well, in a way, sir. Yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened that evening, is all. You mean Mrs. Beat lost her way on the night of the incident? Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box in the next beat over from mine. But she was gone a fair bit longer than what I was expecting. So I thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, but my darling was gone a good 15. Oh, Rolly, you're such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly. The bouquet? Sorry, what bouquet are you talking about? Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Rolly, so romantic. He saved up, he saved up for it with farthings and pennies he found in the gutter while doing his rounds. Yes, how romantic. I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling. Ah, um, ah, oh, yes. But that was just, between us. No talking about it to anyone else, darling. You have to promise. Really? Oh, what was that all about? Constable Beat looked very obviously troubled during that exchange. I'm afraid I can't offer any useful insight, Mr. Naruhodo. But I'm quite sure of one thing. We have to ask Mrs. Beat about the bouquet. Mrs. Beat, this bouquet you just mentioned, I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony, please. Oh, really? Yes, I'd love to. Van Funsies. What happened was, I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while.
Hold it!
You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime? Yes, that's right. Oh, I was so upset. When we ran over and I saw it was a woman with a knife in her back, I I was so shocked. I dropped the bouquet Rolly gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice at first. And then you went to the police box to report the policeman whose beat it was on. Yes, and I came back to the scene together with the other constable you see. That's when I spotted my bouquet again. But the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, it was nowhere near the victim's body at all. In case you need reminding, Mrs. Beat, the victim is not deceased. I was all flustered for a moment before I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road. Your husband, presumably. That's right. Silly me. I'd gone over to the wrong side of the street. Although I'm going to blame the bouquet this time. I can't think of how it got there. I really can't. So the bouquet somehow moved from one side of Briar Road to the opposite? Curious indeed. Isn't it? But the worst of it was, I forgot to pick the bouquet up again when we left the scene. That beautiful rose Rolly bought me with that change from the gutter he spent so long collecting. By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry solitary rose? Oh, oh, yes, yes, that's it. That's the bouquet Rolly bought me for our anniversary with old bits of change he found in the gutter. Maybe just call it a rose. Tell us, Lord Von Zeeks, where did you come by this flower? According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene investigation, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Gerdeb household. Then the pieces still fit. Okay. Although it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case, since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare. Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Could I have it back now, please? No, I think for good measure, this rose should be added to the court record as evidence. Oh, the anniversary bouquet has been added to the court record. But, but it's a symbol of our love. I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back. Good grief. Rest assured that I shall do my very best not to forget, Mrs. Beat. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Okay, first of all, we need to take a look at this. New evidence is new evidence. It's a very stylish paper the flower is wrapped in, isn't it? It's just an old newspaper, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, I suppose it's just because I'm not used to seeing English print. It looks so exotic to me. Ah, I see. Is something wrong? Oh, no. I was just thinking that if you wrapped a stone-baked sweet potato in English newspaper, it might look like some sort of fancy cake. Ah, Susato-san, you do love your cakes. Probably nothing really to note about this besides where it was found. An English rose. It's such a beautiful flower. Ah, this is a rose, is it? I've never seen one before. Do you not take an interest in flowers, Mr. Naruhodo? I wouldn't say that exactly, but I do know 3 types at least. Gosh, 3. Yes, plum blossom, peach blossom, and cherry blossom. Perhaps you should consider branching out, learning some that aren't fruit tree based, for example. Okay. So, here's what I think. Based on this, the only way our theory still holds is if the victim was directly below the window of the Gerdeb household. which means, based on where the bouquet was found, the rose, I think that the original crime scene location was there, and in the 15 minutes where his wife was gone, the constable moved the victim and everything else he found around the crime scene, save for the bouquet because he couldn't see it, to the other side of the street so it wouldn't be on his beat, so he could still have dinner for his wedding anniversary. I think that's what happened.
Hold it!
Cause like, he had 15 minutes alone. And there's no other theory that could save us here. But who knows if he would actually do it. Nothing to report. Because nothing was removed from the scene. Strange, huh? Seems altogether regular to me. Aha! Could it be different? Okay. Let's go through this again. Well, sir, the book was already in the lady's hand when they arrived. Clearly, he just said nothing was removed from the scene. Something about the statement that doesn't sit right. What do you make of all this? Yes. The whole idea of an invisible attacker has been troubling me all along. But I believe I'm starting to get a picture of what really happened here. The fourth book that had no business being at the scene of the crime made me sure that Mrs. Garrideb was hiding something from us. But it's becoming increasingly clear that someone else has been hiding something from us as well. I think I may already be armed with everything I need to strike a decisive blow here. This time, it's going to expose the whole truth about this mysterious affair. So... So... do we present the flowers here?
Objection!
That reveals a striking inconsistency, that last statement. Striking, you say? As I look at you, Counsel, I see your trembling hand, your pallid expression. I think that's a miss. Okay, that's a miss. You invited, sir. Okay, maybe we present the rose here.
Objection!
You claim, I think we got it. You claim, Constable Beat, there was nothing to report in the 15 or so minutes you were guarding this scene. But that cannot be. What do you mean to say? In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the policeman assigned to that beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road to where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, if a single sorry bloom can be described as such, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs. Meager.
Objection!
But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to the fact? No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It has nothing to do with the case. That's why Rolly didn't mention it. I'm sure. No. Because sadly, it's not only your bouquet we're talking about here. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way around. What are you talking about? Think about it. Besides Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Garadeb's book. Mr. Garadeb's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out of the window by his wife, would have struck the pane of the casement window and landed here on the west side of the street, and yet it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony you've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime on the east side of the road, but in fact, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in front of Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb's house. There's no logical explanation for those things, unless somebody deliberately moved them. What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Rolly's gone and done something wrong. Don't you listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says. Wittering on about books and bouquets. Why should we care? It's nitpicking. That's what it is. Oh, good. Mrs. Garadeb's come round. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Garadeb. But deliberately meddling with the scene of a crime is a criminal offense. It's called, tampering, Mr. Naruhodo. But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it. For a very subtle but compelling reason.
Objection!
Tampering. You've barely heard the term before. Tell us, my learned friend, who would possibly have cause to carry out such an elaborate deception? Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All of the evidence and testimony points to that one person in particular. Counsel, I must demand you substantiate this conjecture. Who are you saying is responsible for tampering with the scene of the crime? Rolly Beach, sir?
Take that!
Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Rolly Beat. It was you. What? A policeman? A member of Scotland Yard? What nonsense! Why would my Rolly do something like that? There's no one straighter than my husband. No Bobby works more tirelessly for the people of London. Mrs. Beat, you said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty. The 15 minutes that you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it. You're making it up. It's all nonsense. It's all lies. What about that Japanese man with the whiskers? I bet it was him. He did it.
Objection!
If that were true, Constable Beat would have seen him do it. Oh. And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, it was after the defendant had fled the scene. Well.
Objection!
First, you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusations lack one very important thing. You claim the crime scene was tampered with, but there was only one reason why anyone would commit such a reckless crime: to hide something. That's right. He's right. But my husband and I just happened to be there. That's all. So why would you have why would we have anything to hide? It doesn't make sense. You've offered no motive for this alleged tampering. And until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. Constable Beat had a very good reason for wanting to tamper with the scene of the crime. That's the key to this entire affair. Mr. Naruhodo, have you managed to solve this mystery? Counsel, you have made a very serious accusation against a London police officer. If you are mistaken, I'm sure I need not point out that your reputation as a lawyer will be irrevocably damaged. With that stark warning in mind, you will now explain to the court the motive for this alleged tampering. Yes, my lord. Constable Beat's motive for tampering with the crime scene was to hide where the victim fell. Where the victim fell to the ground. That is what this Bobby had to cover up at all costs. What? Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked? What are you talking about? We told you at the very start, didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road. We saw it happen, remember? It was right here. As if anyone didn't already know. That's certainly what everyone has been led to believe. But in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all. What? What? I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end, Counsel. If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my Nipponese friend. Where are you proposing the crime actually took place that evening? Ba-ba-ba. Right here, sir.
Take that!
But that's on the opposite side of the road. I don't understand. On the evening in question, Mr. Garadev's book fell directly down from the open window above, and your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, never moved at all. What did move was the entire scene of the crime itself. Good gracious.
Objection!
Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. But these witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place. That's right. I saw it with my own eyes. It was 5 o'clock in the evening, and already dark. There was the typical London fog on the ground. When you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid, that was actually on the west side of Briar Road. No, that's not true. It can't have been. Constable Beat then arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help. And during the 15 minutes you were away, he transplanted the crime scene. He moved all of the things shown in this print. The victim herself, the 4 books. He moved everything, in fact, to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road. Extraordinary. But the constable overlooked one thing. What? What did he overlook? The bouquet, I presume. Exactly. The prosecution told the court just a few minutes ago about the discovery of the rose bouquet. Lord von Zeeks said it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. Yes, it couldn't be seen in the dark, obviously, which is why it was only the bouquet that was found in the original position on the pavement on the west side of Briar Road. And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond? Constable Rolly beat. Well, I'm very sorry. Okay. I gotta go refill my water. I'll be back in a minute. Sorry, we'll get into this. Then we'll get everything wrapped up after I have more water to keep doing these voices. Back in 1 minute. Alright, we're back. Let me. Okay, here we go. Nice and. We got water. I. I didn't mean to nod off again. I haven't slept properly in a month. Did I miss anything important? Oh, Rolly. It. It isn't true, is it? What that lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is, because you're the most upstanding, righteous man I know. I had a dream, a terrible dream. All the things I did that night. everything come out, everything exposed. Only it seems he's talking in his sleep again. It wasn't a dream at all. Good, good golly, he admitted to it. Order, order, order. What on earth is the meaning of all this? Oh, Rolly, why? Why would you do something like this? Moving a corpse is 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 a criminal offense, isn't it? Wishing the victim dead should be one too. Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respected member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the good people of London town. I can't say, sir. What? I really am ever so sorry about all this. For damaging the Yard's reputation, for everything. I have a possible explanation for why, on that particular evening, Constable Beat felt compelled to move the scene of the crime. I can think of one reason. What? What? How could you possibly know? You, a foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman. And yet, Lord Von Zeeks, it is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth of the matter thus far. I believe it would be beneficial to the court to hear this extraordinary young lawyer's theory. Counsel for the defense, if you please. Yes, my lord. Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence. At once, my lord. England, Japan. It makes no difference where you come from. Human emotions are the same. And I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's actions. What gives away the motive for Constable Beat's unthinkable actions? His warrant card, sir.
Take that!
I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I have only just arrived from Japan. Which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learned that, though honorable, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world, for example. Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat in all kinds of ways. There's no doubt that the young Bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day. Certainly. But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special. Special? How? On account of this bouquet, my lord. Oh, yes. It was our very first wedding anniversary. Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford this simple gift for his wife, and was looking so forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal. When he and Mrs. Beat stumbled upon a crime scene along Briar Road. When he saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapse on the pavement ahead of him, what must have gone through the man's mind? But sir, just on that one particular day, I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beat puts up with a lot. Being married to a bobby like me, I wanted to show my dear wife how much I care. This is the warrant card that Constable Beat offered to lend me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Aha! Constable Beat. Is that, or is that not, the reason why you moved the whole scene of the crime that day? Yes. Everything you said, it's all right. So, that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat. Oh, exactly. To summarize, the incident actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat. Good gracious. Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you've done? It was the first time since I became a copper that I'd ever cursed God. Stay close to me, Pat. The Colonel could still be lurking around somewhere. As we ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. We've got to report this to the station as quickly as possible. But then, it dawned on me. I realized where we were, where the victim was, Lion, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Why here? Why did it have to happen here? And why tonight, of all nights? Why? It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime. So, I told Pat she'd have to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. It was then, when I opened my mouth to speak, it just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the next beat to mine, Pat. So you have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Meerschaum Street, and then... I'm... I'm... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, Constable. I I just wanted just that one night to take my Patricia out for dinner. Oh, Rolly. Just that one night. You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening celebration would be ruined. And so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction, just across the street to the east pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care. You see, I thought, well, I was sure the victim was dead. You see, I beg your pardon? Oh, of course he did. Otherwise, my Rolly would never have left the poor woman on the freezing cold pavement. Ah, I see your meaning now. But God got me back for my sins, didn't he? That's why. That's why I missed the rose I bought for Pat. Oh no, Rolly, that was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in such a dark place. I'm so sorry, Rolly. And can you tell us, Constable, how many books did you move from one side of the road to the other in total? Oh, 4 it was. Yes, definitely 4. 3 of them dropped by Mr. Natsume, and the 4th being the one that fell from the window upstairs in the Garadeb household, of course. But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? When all the others were scattered haphazardly around, I mean. Oh, well, sir, that's because that's how I found it. How you found it? What do you mean? When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand. You're sure it was this book, The Lion's Pride, that the victim was holding? Oh, yes, sir. No doubt about it, sir. Interesting. The 4th book's information has been updated in the court record. I thought it was an open and shut case at the time, you see. There were only 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw it happen. However, which way you looked at it, it had to be the fellow who ran off who'd done it, I thought. I couldn't see the harm, really. I didn't think moving it all over the road would make a jot of difference. I suppose this is it for me now. I've had it. My lord. Yes, Lord Von Zieks. I believe that concludes the cross-examination of the witnesses. Constable, you may withdraw. Yes, sir. Mr. Prosecutor, sir, what will become of my Rolly? What will happen to him? For now, you are free to go home. The police will contact you in all due course. Please, don't punish my husband. This was all my fault. It's because I am always moaning at him for coming home late. Leave it now, Pat. Let's get home. I am tired. All right then, my love. One last thing, Constable. Sir? Let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem. Yes, sir. Carve that lesson in your mind. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of a crime. Never again, sir. You mean to say? Leave now. This trial is not yet over. Sir! Well, quite a startling revelation, I must say. Whoever thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of a crime like that? Indeed, my lord. Nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here. Principally, that the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsume, is the only person who could have possibly committed the crime.
Objection!
No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else. Another person who could be responsible for the knife in the victim's back. We're getting there. We're finally getting there. Please, forgive me for being presumptuous. But I believe the prosecution is probably well aware of this possibility already. Lord Von Zieks, is this true? Very well. Name the person if you will, and if further investigation is warranted. The prosecution has no objection to the trial continuing. You will name the other person who could have been the criminal. Joan Gerda, sir.
Take that!
The defense would like to once again request the cross-examination of a new witness, my lord. Once again, my assistant made the same request earlier. In order to finally reveal the truth about this case, it's imperative that we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gyaradev. Me? Me? Oh, dearie me.
Objection!
That request has already been denied.
Objection!
But the situation is very different now. Mrs. Gyaradev, answer me this. What do you want now, you little toad? At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Gyaradev. In the course of that argument, a minor house fire was ignited. And, to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened a window that looks out over Briar Road. Well, what of it? You threw this book at your husband when he was cornered with his back against the window. Upon striking the pane of the open, top-hinged casement window, the book plummeted directly down, finding its way to what we now know to be the true scene of the crime, the incident. Yes, and I said, what of it? During the argument, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. So, let me ask you one more time, Mrs. Gyaradev. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back, have you really never laid eyes on it before? Oh. I don't recall it. Seriously? Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw at my husband? And, anyway, the man over there, in all that regalia, said members of the jury needn't testify. Didn't he? Conveniently, yes.
Objection!
No. I have no recollection of saying that at all. Juror number 4. Oh. Make no mistake. You jurors are not special in any way. You are not immune to the judicial process. It's so hard to hide how happy I am reading this line to actually do his voice. You can probably maybe hear it a little bit depending on my audio quality coming across. If you know something about this knife, madam, let the truth come out. But that's a common or garden knife. It could be found anywhere. We have several like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know? What's that? Are you joking? What are you saying, please, Mrs. Gyaradev? Now, listen to me. Listen to me. I refuse to believe all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought I'd injured someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it. Oh, the poor woman. So, yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence. If you're going to insist on this being my fault. You're going to have to prove to me that I threw the knife, if that's what you think. Come along now, chop chop. Do your worst. Well... Well, Mr. Naruhodo, if I had evidence like that, believe me, I would have thrown it at her already. Then, take the stand, juror. Oh. The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this woman. Thank you, Lord von Zeeks. I'm going to have to testify. Juror number 4? As I'm sure you will appreciate, having observed it with your own eyes today, witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being unearthed. Truths of which the witnesses themselves may not even have been aware. Oh, dearie me. So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony, Mrs. Garadeb. And mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Do you concur, counsels? Certainly, my lord. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for, my lord. We got music running in our favor now. This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. I'm here in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer. Witness, state your name and occupation. Oh, yes. My name is Joan Garadeb. And I'm, well, I'm a juror and such like. It sounds like even she doesn't know if she's a housewife or a maid or what anymore. The court has decided your testimony is required in order to clarify matters in this case. Do you understand, madam? Oh, yes. Yes, my lord. You will tell the court everything that took place in your household on the evening in question. And I warn you, do not attempt to hide the truth. Oh, dearie me. Chin up, Joni. Nothing to worry about now. Oh, I didn't know you were here, John. He's here. Wasn't only you in the room that day, old thing, was it? Rather think I ought to testify as well, don't you? But what about your knee, dear? Don't worry about that. Hardly notice it. I'm not the sort of chap to leave a comrade to face disciplinary action alone. Oh, John. I presume you are Mr. John Garadeb. How did he even get to the stand? Yes, sir. Former second lieutenant of the 3rd Regiment of the 4th Northumberland Fusiliers, sir. Seen my fair share of action, and now living the quiet life, as it were. The quiet life? Were you not engaged in an incendiary battle with your spouse on the day in question? Ah, well, yes. Quite. I believe this may represent a first in the proud history of British court. Calling a juror to the witness. Okay, sorry, I completely lost where I was reading. Calling a juror to the witness stand is unprecedented. However, the court will hear your testimony now, juror number 4, and that of your husband. You will recount, clearly and concisely, the events in your home at the time of the incident in question. Sir, at once. Excuse me. The Battle of Gaerta. Oh, that's such a good title for this. It's awesome. Yes, on the day you're referring, the wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now. Knocked a candlestick over and set fire to the carpet. Soon had it out, though, and got the window open. Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him. Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I'd notice if one or two went missing, and I'm afraid. If that bally thing in the victim's back really was one of ours, you'll have a job proving it, I think. It sounds as though it was quite the battlefield in your household that evening. Although, an entirely one-sided assault, it seems. The enemy caught us on the hop, sir. Had no choice but to dig in and take defensive measures. To be honest, if the enemy had kept shelling us for another minute, we'd have been toast. Of course, a veteran such as myself is only too aware that on every battlefield, you're just a gnat's whisker from death at any moment. Are we still talking about a marital quarrel here? Well, I must say I'm dubious that this testimony will shed any light on the origins of this jackknife. In combat, one's focus narrows, such that surroundings are barely noticed. These witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than they have testified already. This may be a dead end. Van Zeeks may well be right. Well, whatever the chances, we only have this last cross-examination to uncover the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, I'm afraid so. Very well, counsel. Begin your cross-examination. All right. The Battle of Garadeb.
Hold it!
The reason is what you told us yesterday, I believe. Yes, that's right. If I remember correctly, it all started because of a note that was tucked into the pages of a book belonging to Mr. Gerardab. A rather passionate note, in fact. But Mrs. Gerardab found the note, discovering her husband's little secret. And she gave him a mighty number of slaps across the face for it, too. What a sordid state of affairs. The underworld came to Earth. I say, when a chap says he can't recall such things, it's common decency not to drag it up. And besides, half of it was wide of the mark anyway. A likely story. These waters run very deep. And what transpired next after these multiple blows to the face? Knocked a candlestick over.
Hold it!
And the fire also spread to some items of furniture, didn't it? The bookcase, my armchair, anything of mine, really. Just so happens there was some bath water around that evening, so I sloshed that about to put it out. A most precarious situation you put yourself in. Ours is a 3-story townhouse on the west side of the street, where the water main isn't connected yet. Have to draw water from a public pump during the day if you need any, you see. The lodgers are always moaning that they can't get to any water at night. Although that little Japanese man buys water in bottles, I believe. The defendant, Mr. Natsume, you mean? Yes. He received a stipend for his studies, you know, from his home country. Can you imagine being able to brew a pot of tea at all hours? He's obviously very well off. Have you actually seen the state of the man? I believe he uses all of his income to buy books. Well, anyway, the point is, I was able to douse the fire with water, fortunately enough.
Hold it!
Press. Even though the room was on fire. As far as I was concerned at the time, it was more important to extinguish my anger than the flames. When a woman wants to throw, she must throw. That is most certainly not true of a Susato takedown, Mr. Naruhodo. How did she know I was thinking that? So please cast your mind back and try to remember. Was a knife among the items you threw at your husband that day? In all honesty, I do not recall. But I feel I must point something out, that I'm no monster. Let me see. some bread, a cabbage,
Fine. Shoot.
garlic, a sponge, a napkin.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, sir? Mr. Gerdeb? Don't shoot! Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind? Nothing of any significance. No. Just that the barrage of projectiles the old thing launched in my direction was somewhat more solid than she implies. Books, bricks, the fire poker, I seem to recall. Ouch. And the woman's aim is Good grief, woman. We're not at home now. This is a court of law. She poured tea into his pipe. Oh, dearie me. Ever so sorry, dear. What's she even doing with a teapot in here? Honestly, John, I would never have thrown such things at you. Obviously. Well, take a look at this then. How do you suppose that happened, Your pipe, sir? Had this thing in my hands as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles, she did. Yes. And when I went to pick the thing up, it was broken in two. I'd like to see a sponge do that sort of damage. I see your pipe was broken. It would never have been sent flying. Unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Anyway, I've managed to bandage the thing up for now. You are one to exaggerate, aren't you, dear? I wonder what she would make of this account. It's important. He bent down potentially unexpectedly to his wife, which would cause her to miss a few items out the window. The defense believes Mr. Garadev's remarks just now may be of great significance.
Objection!
This war veteran's words only tell us one thing. Betray a fiery wife, and pipes as well as hearts may be broken. Sentimental wisdom, perhaps, but hardly worthy of adding to the formal testimony. Indeed, common sense, one might say. Might one? In that case, would you at least permit us to examine the pipes, sir? Well, I don't see why not. Oh, dearie me. There you go again. Trying to ingratiate yourself with a young lady. Very well, the court will accept the gentleman's pipe as evidence. Time to take a peek. Alright. It looks to be in a sorry state with that bandage around it, doesn't it? But for some reason it feels slightly ominous to me. Like it's trying to shout a warning. Probably because it's the same blue as Mr. Garadeb's dressing gown. I suppose it must have considerable sentimental value to Mr. Garadeb. given that he's gone to the trouble of repairing it like this. Either that or he can't afford to replace it. Is that the tip of a knife blade inside the pipe? There's a small nick out of the bowl here. Look, it appears to have been made relatively recently. And see how there are little scrapes and dents all over it. It's clearly a well-loved pipe. Yes, you're right. It seems to me recently that having been well-loved goes hand in hand with getting some battle scars. This particular nick is catching my eye, honestly, because it's clearly new. What's this? What am I looking at here? Oh, something just twinkled inside the chamber of the pipe there. Yes, I saw it. Something stuck in there, I think. Let's turn it over and give it a shake. Oh, what's this? A tiny fragment of metal. It looks like the tip of a blade or something. The tip of a blade? Surely it couldn't be. The fragment of metal has been entered into the court record. We've got it. We've got it. It's over. 100% we've got it. Let me examine the blade in case it adds more information to it. But that's the tip of the knife. The knife was clearly damaged. That was stuck in the victim's bag. This is the tiny piece of metal we found in the chamber of Mr. Garadev's pipe. It looks like the tip of a blade or something. The tip of a blade. Is something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? I don't really know. There's just something niggling me. But I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Perhaps, in that case, it would be wise to examine some of the other pieces of evidence once again. We're examining the knife now, so that we can take a closer look at the fact that it's damaged. Alright, knife blade, open up. Take a look here, if you would. Oh, look here, Mr. Naruhodo. Just at the tip. A small piece of the blade appears to be missing. Wait, part of it's missing. I could be wrong, but I've just got a feeling. You remember this? Ah, that's the tiny fragment of metal that we found inside Mr. Garadev's pipe. Yes, and just maybe. Oh my, it's a perfect fit. Somehow, I just knew it. We've got him. We've got him. I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Mr. Naruhodo. I was just feeling rather disappointed for you that your request was turned down. Oh, no, it's fine. Thanks to Susato-san, we have some new evidence to work with. We should examine it carefully. Well, thank you for that rebuttal, Mr. Garadev. Now could we turn to the crux of the matter? What can you tell the court about the knife used to attack the victim? We've got it. We have it. We've got it. We've got him. Mr. Garadev, could I ask you to take a good look at this, please? You can ask, but I can't see a bally thing. You can't? Used to call me Dead-Eyed Deb. Back in the regiment, of course. But that was some time ago. Even when I'm trying to enjoy a large print book by the fire these days, I struggle to tell a B from a D, and a P from a Q, to be honest. Oh, he does. Dearie me, it's rather wearing being asked about every other letter in every other word. You must be very dizzy. That was unnecessary. What is that? A tiny scrap of metal? Yes, almost certainly from the tip of a blade. And what may appear at first to be a tiny scrap is in fact a crucial piece of evidence. Interesting. And where did the defense come by this evidence? It was lodged in the chamber of Mr. Garadev's pipe. My pipe, you say? By Jove, I wonder how that got there. And what precisely does this fragment of metal signify, Counsel? Are you suggesting that it's in some way related to the matter of the stabbing on Briar Road? I am. What? When put together with another piece of evidence already in the court record, I believe this tiny fragment of metal will unravel the whole truth of this case, my lord. He's got a hole in the back. On the back of his clothes. You appear to be rather confident in that extraordinary statement, Counsel. Very well then, present the pertinent evidence to the court. What evidence, when paired with the fragment of metal, allegedly reveals the truth of the entire case? The knife, sir. This is the knife that was found in the victim's back. If you look closely, you will see that there is a small piece at the tip of the blade that is missing. A common issue with the inferior blades sold at unsavory street markets. Criminals who use them regularly leave the tips lodged in their victims' bones. And what of this particular knife? No doubt its tip has suffered a similar fate, now languishing somewhere near the spine of the victim.
Objection!
No, that is not the case. The tip of this particular knife's blade is the very fragment of metal we discovered in the chamber of Mr. Garadev's pipe. Ah. 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 I don't know how to do that for Van Zeeks. Good grief, Lord Von Zeeks. I don't believe it. The knife from the crime scene and this fragment of metal are a perfect match. Good golly gosh. Order. Is this some sort of Eastern sorcery? This is no magic, my lord. This is a miracle. A miracle? So Van Zeeks has figured it out, has he? Counsel, explain this extraordinary coincidence at once. Yes, my lord. The crucial point we have to ask ourselves here is when did the fragment of metal find its way inside Mr. Garadev's pipe? Something like that was clarified for us in the most recent witness testimony. had this thing in my hands, as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles. She did, yes. Oh, dearie me. I don't know which one of them is talking. During the argument between these two that occurred, just as the victim was on the pavement below, Mrs. Gerdeb flung this knife at her husband. However, the knife missed Mr. Gerdeb, instead striking the pipe in his hand at the time. Excuse me. Which caused the tip to break off, of course. Good lord. Yes, and that is when the tiny tip of the blade found its way inside Mr. Gerdeb's pipe. The chances of that are 1,000,000 to 1. And yet, there's no other credible explanation for how the tip of the blade ended up in your pipe. Then, after losing its tip, the knife ricocheted off the pipe and flew out of the open window. In short, this knife, which I can't do this. It ricocheted out the window. There's no way. How is this possible? In short, this knife which fell from the window of the Gerdeb's house is the very same knife that struck the victim in the middle of the back on the street below. Oh gosh. Oh dear. Oh no.
Objection!
A full-bodied theory. I'll give you that. A complex bouquet of seemingly trivial points, plausibly arranged to create an almost passable vintage. Allow me to toast my learned friend's characteristically Nipponese approach to bottling his argument. Sorry? But, after all, it is just a theory. The bottle, I fear, is corked. Because you see, it's spoilt by an insurmountable inconsistency. His shoes have heels. What? Lord Ranzeeks, explain yourself. What is this inconsistency you claim to have identified? An inconsistency of the simplest nature, my lord. The victim was found with a knife planted in the middle of her back. Yes, in her... That's right. You silly little man. She slapped him. He has the slap mark on his face now. Oh, it's gone. Now, Joan, old thing, what are you getting so excited about? Let us consider the basic facts of this case once more. The victim was walking along the pavement before being stabbed in the back and falling to the ground. If the knife that struck her had fallen from above, there's no possible way it could have planted itself into the victim's back. Yeah, Order! Order! Quite right. You see, that's exactly right. If the knife had fallen on her from above, it would have struck her on the top of the head. Well, I already have an explanation for that. He's lost for words. Look, I knew it. I never liked his theory in the first place. I don't know though. What really did happen? It would appear the defense has made a rather spectacular blunder. If a theory has even one inconsistency, it cannot stand. Your theory, my learned friend, is history. We were so close. I could see the truth. I was so sure we were on the right track. But now the way has been blocked completely by just one simple inconsistency. Or in other words, we simply need to eliminate that one inconsistency, and the theory will stand. Miss Susato, you mustn't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. You were just caught off guard, that's all, and your mind went blank. But if the path you are on is indeed correct, then a way will present itself. The key to this is in the court record. I'm sure all the information you need is there. It seems you have nothing left to say, my Nipponese friend. Well, your silence speaks volumes. A tacit acceptance that your theory is fatally flawed. So the problem is the evidence here is either the fact that she's holding the book or it's just the book. This inconsistency doesn't mean I was on the wrong track. It means that I need to sharpen my mind and dig deeper for the truth. It's a test. Yes. If the knife fell on the victim from above, there's no way it could have hit her in the middle of her back. Under normal circumstances, that is. What are you implying? Counsel, there is a piece of evidence in the court record that can explain this inconsistency, that can explain how the knife fell from above and could have pierced the victim's back. We already have the answer. Goodness. Utter madness. Surely this must be the last time. Counsel, present the evidence of which you speak. So it's either the book or it's the final piece of the puzzle. I mean, it's better to prove, like, the book thing. Because she was holding the book. She bent down to pick it up. We'll try crime scene photograph number 2. I have an extra life if I just have to present the book. This. The 4th book found at the crime scene. Okay, the game understands my train of thought. We're good. This is the final piece of evidence the defense will present. The burnt book. Is that not Mr. Garadev's book? Yes. And to understand its significance, we have to consider how it came to be at the scene in the first place. This photographic print clearly shows the book in the question. And the victim holding it in her hand. But, as we all now know, it was the police constable that put the book between her fingers like that. Quite so, as part of his wholesale transplanting of the crime scene to the opposite side of the road. That is true. However, as part of his testimony, Constable Beat made an extremely enlightening statement on that point. But what made you place the book in the victim's hand? That's because that's how I found it. The victim was already holding the book. In other words, the victim had already picked the book up of her own volition. And clearly, that must have been before she suffered the knife wound. Oh, the music for this is so great. I'm so happy. Well, I should say so. After being attacked with a knife, I don't imagine she'd been doing much of anything. So the question becomes, why did the victim have that book in her hand? By Jingo. Jingo? What? I think I'm beginning to see what may have happened now. Oh, dearie me. We know that the book fell from the top floor of the Gerdeb household onto the pavement below, at precisely the moment that the victim was walking past. Yes, at exactly that moment. The young woman was walking alongside the street in that light fog, when all of a sudden, a book fell right in front of her. The book I threw. Yes, Mrs. Gerdeb. And what do you think the woman did? What would you do if you were walking along and suddenly a book landed in front of you on the pavement? Well, I really can't imagine it. But I suppose she might have reached down and picked up the book. Yes, that is exactly what the woman did. She picked up the book. Oh heavens. And when the woman reached down to pick the fallen book up, what position would her back have been in? That's right. Facing the sky, completely and utterly defenseless. Then, in the very next moment, while the woman still bent over picking up the book, the next object fell from the room above, the jackknife, straight into the middle of her back. How was I right? And at that same time, walking by chance directly behind Miss Green was the defendant, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Well, I never. It appeared to Mr. Natsume that the woman simply collapsed on the floor. In the dark and the fog, he didn't see the knife falling on her from above. Ah. And from the other direction, the constable and his wife saw no one but the victim and her apparent attacker. So there never was a real culprit to run from the scene in the first place. No, this was nothing more than a series of unlikely events that culminated in an unfortunate accident. And that is the real truth behind this case. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Gardev, the very first time you showed me the knife, I had my suspicions. I wondered if perhaps it might have been something like that. There, old bean. Poor Mrs. Gardev. Of course, I never meant for anything of the sort to happen, but it was all my fault, wasn't it? I take full responsibility. She's a lot calmer than I'd expect. I let my anger get the better of me. I threw that book, and I threw that knife as well. John, dear, it's all right. I know. I'm I'm ever so sorry. Truly, I'm sorry. And she's out for the count. Well, he caught him. He caught her. Sorry. Lord Van Zeeks, what news of Mrs. Garadeb? She's been taken to the infirmary. It would appear that today's events had left her in an especially flustered state. However, I believe she will recover in due course. There is no cause for concern. Yes, unbeknownst to themselves, they caused what could easily have been a terrible tragedy. They shall have to prepare themselves for the consequences of their actions. There is some good news, however, my lord. I have just had word from the hospital where the victim is being treated. Her condition is improving steadily, and the doctor believes she will regain consciousness soon. It's strange. We've been talking about the victim all this time, but we've never once met her. How wonderful. The woman is out of danger, it seems. Yes, that is good news. So, Mr. Soseki Natsume? Yes? On behalf of my fellow countrymen, I would like to take this opportunity to beg your pardon, sir. You came from your distant eastern homeland to study our great British culture, and have been repaid with immeasurable unkindness. Please accept our heartfelt apologies. No, it is me who should be begging your pardon. Oh no, Mr. Natsume. That evening, when the young woman just collapsed on the pavement before my eyes, I jumped to the wrong conclusion again in my confusion. What conclusion, sir? I was sure that the woman was dead. Yes, Constable Beat said the same thing, didn't he? He thought she had been killed, too. I suppose she must have looked completely lifeless. It's been about a year since I arrived in Great Britain now, but I still can't get used to life here. I I can't relax. I'm sure there are evil spirits lurking in the fog, like they're haunting me. Poor Soseki-san. His imagination really has got the better of him. Yes, poor man. So, when it happened, I thought the young woman had been taken by the fog spirit. I should never have dropped my books like that and run away. I should have called for help, for a doctor, for the police. Instead, I have managed to create a rift in the relationship of trust between our two empires. And for that, I am truly sorry. Wait, Mr. Gerda took the juror's spot. I just noticed. One could indeed say that sort of mischievous spirit has been at work here, I think. On that one that created a chain of unfortunate mishaps. We were befooled by this spirit and led to false conclusions. But thanks to Lord Van Zeeks and our young lawyer here from the east, that chain has now been broken and the spirit exorcised. I heartily commend you both. Oh. Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Yes, my lord. In concluding this trial, I must ask you one last time for your decisions regarding the defendant's culpability. Are you ready to present your findings to the court? As the foreman of this jury, I can assure you we've reached a fair and just conclusion. I do declare the truth can be extremely cruel at times. Well, I didn't suspect the woman next to me. That's for sure. Is sitting in for the old bean while she's out of action, you know? But I know what her decision would be. Does that mean I'll finally be able to get out of here and start work? Well, about time. I say, I'll have a corker of a story to tell the grandchildren when I get home, won't I? Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby demand your final decisions. Mr. Foreman?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
We've done it! Now it's time for the fireworks inside the courtroom. Very well. Mr. Soseki Natsume, I hereby pronounce you not guilty. Yay! We've done it. There was a lot of detours to get here. And finally, Mr. Natsume. Oh, yes, Lord, sir. You are now a free man once more. It is my hope that you will continue to further your education in British culture. And may you never again be brought before me. Oh, oh yes, sir. Of course. On my life, I swear I'll never set foot in a courtroom again. I'm transported to tears. Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned. Let's go. 20th of February, 3:17 p.m. The Old Bailey, defendant's antechamber. Oh, locum. Wait, you mean me? Of course. Is there another locum here? Is there even one? Compared to the original, locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, your name has become rather short, hasn't it? Oh, what's wrong with using my actual name? Oh, at last, I'm free. I'm free. Joyful, joyous, jubilant jubilation. Heady, hearty happiness, hurrah! Oh, I am pleased. Mr. Natsume is delighted. Would it be so hard to just say that? Then, locum, you did it. You saved me from the brink. Well, what happened to the poor woman was in no way your fault after all. I'm just glad everyone can see that now. No, 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 not that. Lovely, loyal locum lawyer.